demo work today. So let me actually then go and download some of the Illustrator stuff that I'm going to work on today. And again, I have my mic mute thing open, and Mark is previewing or watching it live. So wireframes, visual design studies, because we are going to start moving into the visual design phase of everything. So if I go and download my wireframes, the Jet City ones that I've been working with, save those. And then I go to this, by the way, Seth, is called the Think Aloud protocol that I'm using, right? That you guys, well, this is again, so if I were usability testing my website, I'd be like, and now I'm going to go look for the visual design studies. And I see this link over here in the right-hand side. And if I click on that and I'm looking for the Jet City Improv download example, because that's the task you're setting out for me right now, I can see visual design studies. Okay. And I can look down here and, oh, there's, oh, look at that. There's a download. See? The only one I'm entertaining at this point in time is Seth. He's the only one that gets it. Star, you get it too. I know. Star's like, what about me? Okay, so did I not? Let's see. I go to resources. Shouldn't have downloaded that. That's not what I should be downloading. Downloads, rehabilitation, Washington color palettes. Save link as, save. Rehabilitation Institute, Washington Master of Arts, save link as. Convert, extract all, extract. I guess I could have done this before I started the recording. But, you know, whatever.
They get to hear you.
They
get to hear you mumble.
Talk to myself a bit. It's good for them.
Build character. What?
Exactly. Wireframes, UCI, felt tip Roman. Let's see, I gotta then. Suits, case, is fusion, wireframes, multiple Roman. Did it even save my set? Did not save my set. Oh, that's going to be terrible. New sets. Don't delete me. To Roman. Built tip Roman. Activate. Visuals. Extract all. Visuals. Okay, so where we are going now, and I should really have that thing in front all the time, mic mute thing. Schedule spring, WEB200. So we are here, week 6. We're going to talk color theory and creating tints and shades in Illustrator, using imagery, etc. So basically what this is setting us up for then is your visual design studies. Okay, so all the next week, we are going to have an open lab for you to work on visual design studies. And visual design critique. Visual design studies are actually due at the end of week 8, as well as the critique, okay? So we will have, again, Monday and Wednesday of week 7, all lab. We will have lab time this week, week 6. So in terms of critique, remember typography, where you had to sit down with me for critique. Those of you that took typography. Same premise. You have to sit down with me up here at the desk or in my office, or I don't know, if the weather is nice, maybe outside. Who knows, right? Huh?
I'm used to group critiques.
No, we are not doing group critiques, and here's why. They never go well. So because we are a program that there is no portfolio review, the group critique, because, and this is no offense against anybody, right? But I said at the outset of this that I was going to insult people, so here I go. The skill set and the talent set sometimes is very, very wide. The standard deviation between that is not as narrow as you would have upstairs, because they've all gone through a portfolio review. So having group critiques where people put stuff up on the board and people critique doesn't go as well. I tried that a long time ago when I first started picking up the typography class. So instead, what I do is I have people come up to the desk and I go over their series of work and I push them in the direction that I think they should go. I tell them what's working, I tell them what's not working, and I try to be as just honest and helpful as possible without being an asshole. But because I do have a natural assholeness to my personality, right? Right, Star?
You do the best.
Isn't that what you were saying downstairs?
I think I'm just
Yeah, so something like that, right? Because I do have that natural assholishness to my personality. I tell people nothing's personal. I'm just trying to get you from point A to point B in as just straightforward manner as possible. How did the typography critiques go for everybody? Was I too harsh on anybody? Right? Okay. So from your 3 visual design studies, yes, 3 visual design studies. Right. Here's the thing, Star. They don't have to be a Picasso, a Dali, and a Monet. Does everybody get that? They don't have to be super different from another, right? Between type, we'll get to it in a second. But from your 3 visual design studies that you're working on for your home page and 1 main page, you will then sit down with me to be critiqued in a professional manner. Visual design studies shall be presented via printouts and digital files, okay? And again, I would like you to link to where they are posted on your server. So yes, I want to see them in color on the screen. Yes, I want to see them printed out. Black and white printouts are fine. The main thing of why I want printouts when I'm doing the visual design critiques is to write stuff, take notes, push and pull, then give it to you, okay? So if they're black and white, that's fine. So for the then visual design studies, requirements. You will need to complete a visual design study for your project website that you pick to use to complete your assignments for this quarter. You must complete at least 3 visual design solutions for your home page and 1 main page, right? I don't necessarily need you to do desktop and mobile, right? Because the assets are still going to be similar, okay? You can choose to do whatever you want to do. I just want to see 3 different directions. And here's what I mean by 3 different directions. And I always forget to put brands in that set. So this is 3 different directions. Okay? 1, 2, 3. Home page, main page. Okay? Home page, main page. Because, again, part of this class is I want to see how you are working with sub-navigation and a page layout in terms of a home page layout and a main or gateway or destination page layout. Okay? So whether you choose a gateway or a destination page, that's fine. Doesn't matter. But I want to see then basically through so at least 3 visual design study solutions for your home page and 1 main page, total of 6 pages, by mixing and matching typography, color, and imagery treatments on top of your wireframes, on top of your content layout wireframe documents. Okay, so what does that mean? Well, if we go to the Illustrator, I don't know if it's going to change all. That's right. I don't have some of the fonts for the RIW one. But how did I get from if this is my wireframe, how did I get from here to there? I started off with the same document. Okay, so what I actually did was I used this wireframe document then to start colorizing. Okay, kind of approach, if you will, meaning I don't have a swatch palette built in here yet, but I'll show you how to build a swatch palette. Okay, so if I just selected this navigation bar right there, if I look at then my navigation here, that was my original navigation bar. Basically what I did was I saved my wireframe document as a visual design document, and once I had a color palette in place, then I just started coloring by numbers, right? Paint by numbers, if you will. And then adding little visual treatments into it, like the ribbon, okay? Like the skyline back here. So that skyline back there was an iStock photo download. Meaning, actually, why don't I do this? iStock photo. Seattle skyline. So photos, or if I wanted to search for, and they changed it, Seattle skyline. Let's go back. So no, don't search for it yet. Because apparently I can't choose just illustrations. See how I build in usability testing? my lectures. This is stuff we could send off to them. So Seattle skyline. So the one I used, so that's one that I bought and downloaded. They have a lot more than when I was here last.
Seattle's gotten pretty popular.
Yeah.
Like, just out of curiosity, do you know if most of the people that have uploaded these drawings have the permission for the spacing?
I don't.
Just curious, because I remember having a discussion on typography about spacing.
Yeah.
Skyline.
If it's used like this, I don't think you have a problem with it because it's part of the Seattle skyline. I mean, what are you going to do? Like, black it out, right? Cross it out. So basically, I think this was the one I used where I downloaded. So what they're doing now is they're giving you bigger comps like this, but you can save this image as and let's say I wanted to use this in my spotlight here in my home. Let's say I went File, Place. And I could use this temporarily as a stock photo, even though it's really small there. Send it back. So if I ungroup this, group, and if I choose the skyline and then that box there, and I say object, clipping mask, make, right? I can use my wireframe document to just start putting images into, and especially if this was a vector. So this vector that I originally downloaded, that I bought as a vector, right? You can see that the colors are different, right? So what I did was I had to use a color palette. So if I went to swatches, and I pulled the swatches palette out, and I went small list view, you can see here that I have blue that I called random blue because their palette that they originally gave me was the Jet City Improv red, their Jet City Improv yellow, which actually changed to this yellow, and then the Jet City Improv gray, which didn't make that great of a color palette. So when I was doing then the visual design studies,
We took that blue out of their photographs.
I'll show you what I did.
Okay.
So for the visual design study, if I was showing them 3 versions like I want you guys to do, I discussed a concept with them about branding and what direction we were going to go. I then got a palette from them, which I don't think I have the palette posted, but it was basically that red, that yellow, and that gray. So I went with direction 1, skyline up top, And when I did 1 and 2, I thought to myself, wow, that's a really difficult color palette, right? So I threw the blue in there just as kind of a, let's see if they bite on that kind of thing. Direction 2, which was a little bit more artsy. With the color palette that they had given me, I kind of liked this direction the best out of what I did. I thought they all sucked. You're not allowed to say that, Jonathan.
I'm just thinking back to our discussions in typography about the you think your own stuff sucks and you're never satisfied with your work.
I always think everything I do sucks, which is one of the reasons why I don't like freelancing in terms of graphic design. I'll build you whatever you want because I can build stuff with my eyes closed. But get me to do creative design again, where I take that to the shower with me, I take it to sleep with me, I miss my off ramp on the freeway because I'm thinking about it. Hell no, 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 right? Those who don't want to do anymore teach. Okay. Then here was direction 3, a little bit more corporate. Okay. So that satisfies the kind of 3 directions. Does that make sense to you guys? Mm-hmm. And then from there, they gave me our notes, our logo. Billy is not to be naked going forward. Okay, so I have to use your original logo. Yay. And then I put in the color options that they wanted me to because they liked option 1. But then they said, do the sky this color and the ground that color. And ultimately, I then put together a bunch of color combinations. And again, this is the one that they finally ran with. Okay, so how did I get to that point then? Like I said, well, first and foremost, we started with frame layout that we had. Okay. I then, like I said, in the wireframe layout, brought them why you see in my document, every time I open it up, that skyline is in there. That's because in the wireframe document, when I did the wireframe, then I started talking to them about the direction we were going to go in. And I'd shown them some examples of some illustration, and what we needed to do was then hit the mark for who they are, right? To quote Mark Pfaff. Is that me? Oh. Oh, the volume over there. Okay. I'm trying to bust somebody for talking, and it's me. So anyway, for the Jet City Improv, Mark, what'd you say that visual design suits them?
Yeah, it fits who they were.
It fits who they are.
Yeah.
Do I think it's the best thing ever? But I got paid and they love it. So my opinion just doesn't really matter, okay? I did the best I could with the constraints that I had and the amount of fucks that I still had left to give, okay? So I showed them then this direction and they said, yeah, that looks great. You know, and I told them we could put a plane in there and we could put the building, the Jet City Improv building in there, which never really worked out the way we wanted it to, et cetera, et cetera. Okay. So then the next thing was to take their color palette, some imagery that we started to get, right? So in some of the other options that I came up with, I bought a couple of other skylines, right? Which this is probably the one I think that I grabbed that Space Needle out of to do design number 2. And then from there, it was integrating their typography, right? So we talked about why you want to choose a typeface that you do. Again, they wanted me to use Gotham Black, and they had a color palette. What if you don't have a color palette? How many of you don't have a color palette? Okay, so part of your problem then, So let's kind of divert to now from here, and I'll get back to this in terms of taking the color palettes and making it into a swatch selection that you can use in Illustrator. Okay, but in terms of color, first and foremost, if I wanted to go see the circus, I would. Okay, so don't let a clown design the color palette for your web page. What does that mean? One, don't have 8 colors. Right? Stick with 2, 3, 4 at the most. Right? If you're going at 5, you might be pushing it. I'll show you how to take 2 or 3 colors and extend that color palette using tints and shades to bring in the dynamics of it all. 2, you have to pick colors that go together. That's the tough part. How many of you have ever put a color palette together? How many of you put a color palette together and thought, I don't know if it really works together? I'm with you, Jonathan, right? Okay. But before we get to that, because I have suggestions for you, use pre-existing color palettes, right? That have been designed to go together, okay? The influence of color. Well, as a web designer seeking to offer a message to your audience, you will find that you need to understand the psychological effects, cultural influence, and even gender issues associated with colors. Culture, gender, whatever else you want to throw in there. Believe it or not, colors mean something different to you if you're from one country to another country, right? Colors will mean something different to you whether you're one gender or another gender. It will mean something different to you, you know, in terms of psychological, right? There was a study done. Well, let me ask it to you like this. Why do sometimes they paint the walls pink in prisons? Has anybody heard that
To
one?
make people less aggressive?
Right. Pink is a calming color. Red is a very aggressive color.
Couldn't they have also chosen blue as well?
Possibly, right?
Okay.
But I've seen a documentary where they did a study where they painted the walls
I
pink.
just thought blue was the
Yeah.
common color. I was just guessing
Sure.
on that.
They painted the walls pink and they studied the behavior post-pink walls. And sure enough, it made the inmates less aggressive.
The University of Iowa painted the visitors' locker room thing.
Really? Nice. That's dirty. Dirty tricks. It's like those stupid peanut things that they wave behind the basketball rim. Or excuse me, the basketball ring. Thank you. Thank you. So in terms of communication, right, that you learned from me in typography, Jonathan, it was what? Communication. Communication, communication. What does that typeface say to you? What does it say to the world? How does that typeface communicate the essence of your brand or a misrepresentation of your brand to the world at large, right? Every choice that we make should be a very, very rational, backed up with in other words, if I ever ask you, why did you do this? And you say, I don't know, you get a 0 for that. So in terms of then color psychology, why you would choose certain colors, well, you would choose red for energy, love, passion, aggression, danger, stop. Blue, trust, conservative, secure, clean, sorrowful, order. Sorrowful, right? I would say gray is more sorrowful. Sorrowful. Green, nature, earth, health, jealousy, renewal. Orange, fun, happiness. Orange and yellow together, circus clowns, right? But one way, shape, or form, again, we would choose any one of these colors for the associative reasons of, right? So black, sophistication, death, if you're Gothic, right? Silver, is silver in here? Yeah, gray silver. Intellect, futurism, modesty, sadness, decay, elegance. So if I look at, I just accidentally closed that window. That's not what I wanted to do. So if we looked at why I chose the colors for the Merriweather project that I did a long time ago. Blue and silver. Okay, so we went from this to the other design. So let's talk about this as a visual design for a second, because all of you are trying to get me to look at websites that suck, are you not? Hey, Mike, look at this one. Hey, Mike, look at this I found on the interwebs. Hey, Mike, look at this last one that I found on the interwebs. Ha, 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 ha. Right? That's kind of fallen by the wayside after a while. Okay? Well, let's look at this in terms of a visual design and color palettes. So this was the original color palette that they gave me. Blue and orange. Good or bad? Why or why not? Dana.
I think visually they're opposite colors. to each
They're
other.
complementary on the color spectrum.
And so they make each other more prominent when you use them together.
And when they come together, they make a,
Visually interesting.
shh, not yet, a chromatic gray. Okay, so complementary opposite ends of the color wheel, when they come together, they make a chromatic gray. Okay, so yes, same thing with red and green, Christmas colors. They're opposite ends of the color color wheel. So yes, they do. You hit on a good point. They look very bright, right? They're very, very distinguishable from another, right? The downfall of that, though, is when you look at this logo, you think to yourselves, Adam, which one in particular?
Go now.
The Denver Broncos.
Okay, then. I see that.
So if you don't want to represent the Denver Broncos,
That is, yeah.
see what I'm saying? So that's where that is an association by what colors mean to us in our life.
It's
right?
also just really hard on the orange and blue.
Well, the Denver Broncos give orange and blue a bad name, if that's what your point is.
Or no, my point is
I'm
that
kidding.
like literally
Anyway,
everything is orange and blue.
what?
Literally everything is orange and blue
True.
these days because it's the only like opposite color that you can get away with that doesn't have reference coarseness or have any other sort of things to it. So everybody uses orange and blue.
They're very bright, contrasting colors, right? Complementary colors that are very distinguishable from one another. So they end up being very bright, like you were saying.
They also read well if you're red, green, colorblind.
Right. So, but to represent a business that Microsoft is one of their key, right? So they're trying to represent more Fortune 500 type atmosphere. Orange and blue might not be the Fortune 500 color scheme you want to go with. What were you going to say, Dave?
I think that the logo design where you're using orange and blue is correctly used because you have a smaller ratio of orange to blue.
Correct.
And so if you have too much orange, then it really offsets it. Makes it
It really, really offsets it. True. So it is all how you use it. So in this design, blue is the dominant color. Orange then is what we call the accent color, right? The one that you might want to use for hyperlinks and the touch on the whatever, right? Where blue is the solid, right, color. Same thing like the purple and gold for UW. The purple is the solid dominant color. The gold is then the accent color. So that's the way they work together. True. Okay. So in terms of then using those two colors in a palette like this, they attempted to use the tints and shades in the color scheme, right? The kind of monotone of those colors. So how did that go here? poorly. Okay? Readability, readability, readability. Very, very poor. I still don't know why that's there. Why? What does that mean? What does that mean?
Communications.
Communication. Why? So for those of you at home, I should be focusing on this right here. What? I'm pulled over here. What is that ripple? What did somebody just drop something in there? I should wait. What did they drop? Wait, is there a fish in there? What's going on? And then I look at this right here. These are colors then that are not within the color palette. Why are they being used? Jazz hands. In other words, let's put it this way. In terms of elements in the site design, use the color palettes for anything regarding the site design. The only place that you should use colors outside of the color palette is if you have a full color photograph, right? Which they didn't use a full color photograph here, so they went wrong here, okay? So let's see the redesign. So here then is the redesign where I went with this color blue and that color silver. So when you see this versus the old one, again, I couldn't see the old one without thinking either Denver Broncos or anybody else from Southern California in the 70s and 80s? Nobody? Union 76 gas station? Anybody? Okay. That was my childhood. So that's what I associate those colors with. Now, Union 76 has changed to red, white, and blue. But I remember what's his face from the Dodgers commentating the Dodgers, and Union 76 was a sponsor, and that's what I remember from my childhood, right?
You don't remember.
Not a bad memory. What?
You don't remember Vin Scully's name from your childhood.
Vin Scully. I do not remember Vin Scully's name. I just remember him talking about Johnsonville Brats and Union 76, right? Vin Scully. Exactly. So if we then look at this logo combination, describe it to me.
It is a little bit more. However,
It's a little bit more what?
somebody said over there it was a little much more boring. However, it is a little bit more. If you're going after the Fortune 500, it does have a little bit more of that. Take me more seriously.
Right.
A bit more power to it.
Power,
Yeah.
elegance, sophistication, corporate, take me seriously, trust, conservatism.
Yeah.
That all played a part in why I chose those color combinations, right? And then lastly, what I had to do with the color combinations was extend the palette out, right? Because two colors isn't enough. You're going to need to then, if you look around you, right? Anything from a sphere, right? You are going to use tints and shades, black to white, to achieve the dimensionality, right? Now, in terms of a website design, we're not going to make it look like a racquetball if we're using blue. But what we are trying to do is use that color palette, that extended color palette, to do things like, let's go back to the Jet City one. Well, if I need to bring in some dimension here on this ribbon, how do I draw a ribbon? Right? Well, I use the base color. But what about if I need to draw something that's kind of in the shadow? Well, if we look at the color palette here, right? Base color, JCI yellow 2. base color, JCI yellow 2, somewhat of the shadow, instead of picking a totally separate color, right, which would just be wrong to do, you would then need to use black or a shade of black over top of that color to create that dimensional look, right? So same thing what I did here in terms of the skyline. Well, if the original skyline was gray or blue, and then I needed to use, in other words, why does this skyline look cohesive according to all the colors in it, right? So I went from JCI gray, which it's not showing up there, right? Well, there it is. So I went with their original gray and went from all the way to white to all the way to black. In other words, take the base color whatever it is. In this case, when I did this logo, it was PMS 281 and PMS 430, and went from here all the way to white or to 20%. Then from the base color all the way to 80% black. From here, 20%, 80%. So therefore, we can use that color dimensionally. So if I opened up then, well, let's keep on going on the, to make my next point. So does that make sense why you would want to choose a color, right? So choosing your colors, or this maybe should say using your colors. Well, you want to use your colors effectively in your backgrounds, in your body text and headlines, and in your navigation, right? So headline text, body text, accent text, well, also the background it sits on. So if you're not sick of this website yet, let's talk about it. 2 colors of the color palette. So they gave me this color palette. PMS 222 and PMS 414, if it was on a white background. PMS 222 and PMS 415, if it was over top of a dark background. So I went with, I think, this one. But one way, shape, or form, right, I needed to use that color palette to fulfill the hierarchy of the overall web design. So where I started with, again, was I started with the 2 color palette that I was handed off. I think they actually had a third color, a yellow, that was not very widely used, right? And didn't really fit the color palette, didn't go very well together. Again, how do you pick colors that go well together? Well, we'll talk about that in a minute, right? But once I picked those colors and took them and made a tints and shades palette, what happened with the tints? Oops. Pink. That doesn't look really great. So there is a rule up at UW for their brand guidelines. Swear to God, I shit you not. This is a real rule. they will not allow you to use tints of the purple. Why? Turns into lavender. Okay. So only some colors translate well into tints. Like this one, the PMS 415. That base color translates great into tints. I gotta check my microphone here. It's off the screen.
I see no headphones are going on.
Good. There it is, it's on. I just gotta make sure that that is there. Because if it all of a sudden mutes, it'll start blinking on me, right? But this base color makes a great set of tints. Very useful, especially when it comes to the hierarchy of the background, right? So one could argue here, if we go back to the kind of dominant color, what was the other word I used? The dominant color and the kind of accent color. Which one is the dominant and which one is the accent?
Red's kind of dominating because it's brighter.
It's not as cut and dry, right? In terms of which is the dominant, which is the accent. We could say, this is the dominant one, and maybe there is no accent one. This is the dominant one, and this is really the subservient one, the grayish one, right? So, same thing with the Merriweather one. The blue is the dominant one. The silver is kind of the subservient one. There is no accent, one that really pops out, like the orange, okay? But nonetheless, this subservient color, if that's what we want to call it, well, might as well, right? I always think of Depeche Mode, Master and Servant, when I'm talking about that. Don't ask me why, it's part of my high school days. And then going from the base color to shades. This right here is a very useful set of background colors that I can then use for the hierarchy of information, okay? Meaning, if we're talking about backgrounds, how do backgrounds function? If you look at my notes, they're the canvas upon which everything else sits. Okay? So remember what we learned in typography. In terms of if we have a dark background and white text, this dark background is going to encroach in on the letter forms. Well, with this white text being beefy and bold enough and choppy, they don't have clear type turned on by default on these computers. I don't know if you've noticed.
What's clear type?
Clear type is the font smoothing on the PCs. So, make sure I see my mic thing. Okay, so if we look at this then, here's that gray used in 3 different instances of background. One as a background for this text, where would you say that this text pops out of that background enough? Is readable? Does its job? Sure. Did the font smoothing work? No. Why? I don't know. The job of this background out here in the dead area is to frame the design, but not to compete with the design. In other words, we should not see dancing squirrels out here. Or, excuse me, hamsters, right? The whole hamster dance thing, where people put backgrounds, repeating backgrounds out there, right? It needs to be some kind of solid background that does not, in other words, if I'm looking here in the middle of this, right? I'm not pulled out to the backgrounds. True? So it does its job. Okay? Same thing with the the Merriweather one, right? Using the tints for the gray to transform the background, right? On the kind of map there, to use it as a gradient here, to use the darker blue as a gradient in the people and in kind of the bars and stuff, and then to have this background out here, right? You can focus on the meat and potatoes of what's going on in the middle without being pulled out to these backgrounds, right? Contrast ratio. Well, we can say that maybe, okay, this is what you were saying, was that, yeah, that's the dominant color, but it's almost kind of an accent color if you put it over top of that background. So so that whole dominant color, accent color, subservient color is kind of a slider based on how you use those colors in combination with one another, right? But in terms of contrast ratio of black text over top of that, we have our contrast ratio, right? If you're going to use gradients, use them sparingly. Don't make everything a gradient, where gradients are clashing with one another, right? So I like using gradients in my work. Subtle gradients, right? The subtle gradient from the dark over here to the light over there. The subtle gradient up here, or the subtle gradient down there. The subtle gradient in the navigation bar. They wanted me to make things look a little more three-dimensional, those words, right? So by using subtle gradients like that, right, I was able to achieve that result. Same thing with, it's not up and running anymore. Man, I wish I had a, let's see, let's go back to, I don't know if I got real good screenshots of this. It's not up and running any longer. Yeah. So I used a subtle gradient in the background there as well. Killing me. Body text and headlines. So that was, does that make sense about backgrounds, how to use them? Kind of, it's the canvas on which the focal point is sitting. Okay. Body text and headlines. Again, body text, easy to read. Pick a color that reads well on the background you have chosen. More often than not, black text or a white background, or a dark color text over a very, very light background, right? For the accent text, then, white text over that background like that is utilized effectively for accent text. White text here over that gradient, you can see that this button has white copy, but there is a black drop shadow behind it. So it's red over that button. So if the point is of that button then is to be functional, dynamic, right? It needs to look like a button. How do you achieve that? So this is all HTML, CSS, no graphics involved there, right? Where you see the gradients of the very, very light all the way to the dark here, right? And then white text, and you see a black drop shadow text, and then you see a border around it that is the base color all the way around it. That's how that button works.
What are your thoughts then about having an image in for the background?
Say it again?
What are your thoughts of having an image in
For a button?
for the background?
For the background, sure, right? That's where on Jets and Improvs, then this back there is an image, right? Great. For that type of a background, sure, but when it comes to buttons and that kind of stuff, that gets tricky. Even right here, you see this folded over thing right there? That is a background image sitting top right over a box of color, right? So this is basically a yellow box that then has a PNG file that's white here, and then that darker yellow color right there. Okay? So stuff like that, absolutely. Make sense? Same thing with this tickets button. I won't be able to open that, but that is a graphic behind there that I got for my stuff. It's all relative to what you're trying to do, right? Like Jet City Improv, their design needed to be illustrative, right? It needed to be artsy. It's an improv show, like a comedy theater improv show. So it needed to be artsy versus something like this that needed to be very corporate and serious, right?
It looks like a business card.
Huh?
It looks like a business card.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It looks, in other words, whether you like it or hate it, it does its job. It's an effective design, or it's a decent, solid design for the business at hand. Same thing with the Jet City. It looks like Jet City.
Compare it to the old one again. Like what they started off with.
I mean, how could you, leaps and bounds, right? Same thing with the RIW one, right? Physical therapy, doctor. Does it look like it could be for a physical therapy doctor's office, right? And again, you notice that a lot of the design today is just a bunch of solid colors stacked over top of each other, right? Where, if we look at our good old alma mater, that's not it.
Not again.
Yeah, but it's a bunch of solid colors, and they're using a color palette, right? They have some bright colors here, right? But they're still using the tints and shades, effectively. One could argue. Tints and shades.
It's blue and green because they're in Seattle.
Matter of fact, I believe that the visual design here was done by Reed Wacker is his name, who was a former Seattle Central student. So Reed, so basically I'm taking all credit for this design, is what I'm saying, because I taught him how to do it, and he totally did it the way I taught him how to do it. Thanks for not laughing too hard at me, Dan. Right? Huh? So body text and headlines as well. So again, for headlines, right? This is where headlines can be that dominant color out of your palette, right? And then for hyperlinks, if you have hyperlinks inside the text, that's where that could be that accent color. So if I even had a third color there to work with, I could have used that accent color. But again, if you have too many colors coming together, right? Very bright colors, this is starting to look like a clown designed this. True? Okay. If you added yellow in there, boy, that would be over the top, right? Navigation. The user should be aware of the navigation, but not distracted. Non-distracting color from the palette should be used. Establishing rules for navigation via color will help overall consistency. So this is where, again, using legibility versus readability, right? This is legible because it's not body copy, right? Short words that can be, that you can make out the word over top of a background. And then when things function for the rollover, it functions. Same thing here, right? I was always fond of using kind of a grayed out navigation scheme, and then when you rolled over it, it highlighted, and then that would be the "You Are Here" link, right? Because the "You Are Here" link kind of stands out, right? It needs to be functional, not readable. It needs to be legible, okay? So how do you choose a color palette then? This is the big issue that a lot of you guys are going to be struggling with, okay? So I put together some links here that you can look through. Let's take a look at this UX booth one, because I don't want to delve too far into color theory, because this is not a color theory class. I want you to use an existing color palette, right? But this is basically, again, the color wheel, right? Where you can take this color wheel and make it darker and lighter, and then pull colors out of that color wheel, right? But here is where we had the complementary, right? The orange and blue, opposite ends, the green and the red, the purple and the yellow, right? So if you've ever looked at UW's color palette and thought to yourself, wow, those are really bright against each other, right? The orange and blue, so exactly what Dana said, right? They're on opposite ends of the color wheel, so they stand out from one another, okay? So that can be used effectively if you're a sports team, right? So for UW, college athletics, man, that works great. For the Denver Broncos, works fantastic, right? For analogous, you may want to choose a set of colors then that are next to each other on the color wheel, like a yellow and orange and a real dark orange going to red, right? And then you could even maybe take that and say, okay, then I want an accent color with it. So let's take a look at some of these other ones. Right. So again, monochromatic. So this is the whole tints and shade thing. A color scheme that is just made up of one hue, right? Meaning, I believe this is just the base color and then adding white to it. So that's what we're going to do. Split complementary. This is a really good one right here, where you can kind of have the two kind of analogous dominant ones and then one across from the other, which is the kind of accent color, right? These look like they go together, and then that is the one that's kind of out of the ordinary, but it's, I don't know how else to say it other than these are proven theories that kind of go well together. Yeah?
Is the split complementary sort of what the Seattle Central website is using? Is the green
Yeah.
and blue an opposite?
Possibly. I'd have to ask them. Possibly.
Yeah.
Triad. So instead of two colors here and then that split complementary, you divide it into thirds, right? And use those. I think theirs is more the triad. I think that's what they're using, right? And again, analogous. So those are good starting points. And what you can do then is if you want things a little bit more darker and warm, you kind of make things darker and then pick those colors out of the color wheel. You want them a little bit more light, then you pick those out of the color wheel, right? So I think what, Seth, is that cooler that you have up on the screen?
I believe so.
I have one called Peloton.
Yes.
So analogous, right? How do you make it dark? Well, screw it. You guys can play with stuff like that. What was the one that you said you had up?
Peloton.
Peloton. Would you do me a favor and leave that as a comment?
You got it.
Right. So the one I like, or the one that I've used, is this Color Lovers one, and Cooler as well, But here's why I like this color lovers one. If I remember my password, Mark. Nope. Hey, second try. So, is anybody doing a cupcake factory? Because that's my example I use in this class. Anybody doing a website for a cupcake factory? No? Let's say you were. Ooh, does this look like a good cupcake factory one right there? Yeah? Not sold, Dana? This whole thing right here? In other words, this is the whole palette. Yeah, or this is the whole palette. Or this is the whole palette. This is a real good one right here. Let's say that one, okay? So here, I don't know if I would really go with all 5 of those colors, but let's say I needed to then do this. Check to see if my mic is on. Yay, my mic is still working. Okay. So let's say that I had my wireframe here and I needed a color palette to work with. So I can do one of two things. I can work with an existing color palette. Oh, what happened to my colors? Oh, that bastard deleted them all when he was doing his wireframes. Now what do I do? Let's say that I was doing this for RIW, right? And so I'm going to Command Z in this one and take that image out of the spotlight. Let's say I needed to start doing the RIW one. I've already made that RIW palette. So if I open up from the desktop, here's that RIW palette, right? That I made, that I showed you earlier. So all these boxes then is basically what I did was I took the root colors and made tints and shades out of them. That once I do that, I can, with my wireframe document here, everybody watch this. Ready? Ready? Window, swatch libraries, other library, logo RIW. Here now is that palette, that RIW palette, that if I wanted to put that color background all the way behind everything, to start doing my design, I could. Does that make sense? This is how, again, when I basically tell you guys that I look at me teaching here as me standing up here and going, look what I do. This is what I'm talking about. It's the exact same process that I've used on all my visual design studies, right? Get the color palette, whether I have to go make one myself, come up with one, or they've given me a logo and have a color palette that they've done. Okay? So if now that's what I want to do to start out with. Well, what if then needed to come up with a color palette, right? So one of two things. I can use a pre-existing palette or come up with a new one, right? But what if I went and I downloaded one, Color Lovers? Where'd it go? Where'd it go? Where'd it go? Did I download it? I have not downloaded it yet. That's why. Let's go with this one. Now that I'm logged in, I've created an account. Let's say I want to use this palette, or let's say I like 1, 2, 3, 4. I like those. I don't really like this one, but I like those other 4. I think that's going to be a nice color palette. So then I need to extend that color palette into tints and shades and save it as a palette that I can then import into my wireframe documents, or import it. In other words, when I'm doing work for them, when I start a new document, I then import that color palette that I have saved on my hard drive. So I need to then make that color palette. All right. So if I'm here, download options. I can download it as an Adobe Illustrator file or Adobe Swatch Exchange. I typically do Adobe Swatch Exchange. Why? I don't know. It's just what I do, right? Save it to the desktop. Let's actually save it as an AI file and see what that looks like. Sure, why not that one? So here is then, yeah, because then we can just use this as our document. So if we want to then make our palette, we have our base colors. Let's take that base color and delete it, right? So let's start out with that brown color to start off with. So I'm going to draw a square. I'm going to take that square, and then I'm going to hold down the Alt key, click, and drag. Then I'm going to hit Control D. Alt, and drag. So I've got my base color to tints that I want. I've got my base color to shades that I want. Now, I have to point this out to you because I spent a long time writing up this tutorial. You can go the long way, like I did here, in terms of, great, I have these Pantone colors. Everybody remembers what Pantone colors are from the typography class, right? If you're not using Pantone colors in this class, I don't care, because you're not printing anything. You're just doing a web, right? But I could then go and use the slider here to make my tints. I could change it to a spot color and then use the slider to get my 100%, 80, 60, 40, 20s. I could then switch things to CMYK and then add my K value, right? 20, 40, 60, 80. Or after I did this tutorial, Adobe decided, you know what, dude? We're going to make this easy on you now that you've taken the time to write all that crap up. We feel bad for you. So here's what we're going to do for you. Instead, there is the color guide palette. Right. That if I then say shades, right. See what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So I could basically choose that color and then check all those and drag it over here. And now I have, anyway, let's see. That was the base color, right? Yeah. Let's delete that one. Yes. Brown. Right. Let's step back a little bit. Put the brown in there first. Brown. And then we can take these, put them in brown. And that's the original one there, right? That I can delete. Yes. So this color then is that one. And I can go, I don't even necessarily need to make this thing, but it's kind of fun for a visual documentation. But now I have my tints and my shades. Delete the original one. Yep. Save that. The desktop. And then if I open up then my wireframes, I want to start colorizing it. Other library, desktop, might as well use that AI one that we downloaded because we saved it and there it is. And so I would do the tints and shades to the other ones as well. But that's where then I could start colorizing away, right? I know, absolutely just, holy shit, how simple is this stuff, right? Okay, but then you got to put everything together, right? And that's the hard part, right? But color theory, going back there. Lastly, in terms of color, right? Just the same way as, so I got that whole tints and shades thing out of that, the Zen CSS book that I used to use. And this one talked about, well, let's say you have an artist that did a painting. You could use the eyedropper to get those base colors to make those tints and shades. excuse me, palettes out of. Okay. But what happens when you want to bring those into HTML? Meaning, those of you that are in my WordPress class might have seen so far that, again, this is where I use that gradient. I have the purple and the gold. And if you look at the style sheets, what I've done is for the purple and then the gold, I've saved the Tints and Shades palettes. Now, I don't know if these ones still work any longer. The last time I went to Slayer Office, it was having trouble. Ooh, there it is. It works still. Good. This is the one that I like to use, where if we had a base color, like if we went back to the Illustrator document here, and I wanted to use this orange as my base color, if I double-clicked that, opened it up, or opened it up here, right, I could get the base hex color. Or if they've given you a base hex color like the Jet City Improv did, I could then take that base hex color, go here to Slayer Office, which I have then linked to right here, Color Palette Creator. And if I then put that color in there and said, okay, it'll give me the tints and shades. I can then, what I like about this one over top some of the other ones is it'll give you a permalink for this palette, right? Where I take that permalink and I put that as the comment in my CSS so that I can always refer back to it. There's also one on the WC3 schools. Sorry, W3 schools color picker. Where same thing. Enter a color value. Okay, there it is. They have the lighter, darker, and then they have all the hex colors there. I don't know if, I haven't been able to see it on this page, if you can save this link. But so that's basically how I get and expand those colors. Lastly, using imagery. Here are my 2 rules of thumb. The images of your site in the Spotlight application or highlighting a particular feature or idea most likely should be full color or independent color. Meaning, Spotlight, it's a feature. Doesn't have any text over it, but one way, shape, or form, those should be full color photographs, right? They are photographs, they are images within the body of the content of the website. If you have images that are part of your background, supporting the content of the site should adhere to the color scheme of the site. Meaning, let's go back to that same example. If you have little squares out in the background, I don't know if you can see it here, but those are tints and shades of the purple. So it is the supporting artwork. The skyline is all JCI gray. The light on top of the Space Needle is the JCI red. This is part of the JCI yellow color scheme. Went and put backgrounds behind these and did adhere to the color scheme. They're going to break it. A little bit. If you have buttons like this, they should adhere to the color scheme of the site. Content image, full color. Make sense? So, where can I find images and illustrations to use? I always use iStock. That's where I typically start. You can get full color photos. You can download comp images, like I did, right? You can download comp images of even the Illustrator vector files and use those temporarily until you are going to need to buy them, right? So, if and when you are, let's close some of these palettes or tabs. So if and when you are doing a visual design study like this, and you're not sure if this is the right photograph to use, or if this is the right photograph to use, this right here, so did you guys know that they did physical therapy for male strippers? They don't, but that's my joke because of the visual designer that used that photo.
Well,
Very inappropriate photo is what I'm saying.
it's a nice plaid.
Appropriate photo, not so appropriate photo. Was from Shutterstock. So when you're doing your visual designs for me, download comp images from iStock or Shutterstock or Getty Images. Leave the watermark in there. Do not Photoshop out said watermark. As well, don't do images, don't do image searches on the Google machine for photos. You will be using copyrighted material that you do not have rights for.
There is a function to do license for use when you go and research. So you can do that, but there's not really enough.
Yeah. Do yourself a favor and just don't do that. Use iStock, get yourself in the practice of using a stock imagery house.
Could you do free royalty stock images
Sure.
that are,
Yeah. Just don't do this.
just don't do the Google machine?
Don't do this.
Right.
Hold on. Oh, look, there's Heart on the Job Joe. Pose. Don't do this because you're not going to know where you're getting them from, right? Because eventually you're going to have to buy them.
Mhm. Or not. I worked at a temp job where that was my job, was to steal images off the internet. Mm-hmm. Bar Green Ellison, real company.
Yeah.
Fake image.
And then you'll be shown stuff like this,
Mhm.
I mean,
or like this guy.
I mean,
That's
I don't
inappropriate.
really want to use that one.
The guy with the injury. Ugh.
I'm going to itch this guy's neck for him. Okay?
It probably hurts.
I know. What about icons, textures, and patterns? I don't have a link here yet, Mark. You need to put a link to flat icons here for me, if you will, one of these days.
Right there.
Right there, please. Okay. So Iconspedia is where I've gotten a ton of icons from. I've started to use this place. Flat icons. You can use them as fonts, meaning they're kind of small, but these over here, those icons right there, are actually fonts. that I downloaded from Flat Icon. Okay. All right. So again, lastly, your, did you put that up there yet?
No?
You know, so.
Could you use a font instead of an icon to make it consistent with size?
It's way wicked easier once you get the hang of it. And yeah, size, and also when it's a font, then it's not an image that's pixelated. It's a vector font. It's a scalable vector graphic, right? And until we really get into the age where scalable vector graphics are widely being able to use, like you used it in the typography class, doing it as a font is one way of doing it. Okay.
They also reflow and resize as you adjust your viewport and such.
Yeah, yeah, the scalable part.
Yeah, well, because you're using it, it's in there as a font, so it'll fit in there with
Yeah,
your markup.
and you can change the the size and the CSS, right? So again, what you're then tasked with now is you have to complete at least 3 visual designs by mixing and matching typography, color, and imagery, okay? So I'm gonna open up this monkey grind espresso one. There, come on, Sarah Smiley. So basically, when you are posting this for me, post a thumbnail image that I can then look at. You don't have to put it in its own HTML page any longer. You can do just a JPEG that I can see like this, right? Does that make sense? I'm done talking for today. I'm going to stop broadcast. Hey, the network didn't shut down on me once and the microphone didn't shut down on me.
Yay.
Yay!